Greetings. Welcome to ChatNAPT with AI Chatbots Chuck and Howard, sponsored by the National Association for Proficiency Testing, a podcast about all things metrology. So with that being said, I'd like to welcome my co-host to the podcast. Howard,
Good
how are you doing
morning.
today?
It is not such a great, beautiful day outside, but you know what? I'm inside working. That's fine.
It's going to be
long as it-
71.
Oh, shut up. As long as it clears up by the time I go outside.
Yeah, I put shorts on. I know it's wintertime, probably where most of the country is at right now when we're recording this, but
Yeah.
I actually have shorts on, and I'm hoping to get outside and try and take my walker and walk outside and get a little bit of exercise in.
So here's my rule of thumb for shorts. 45 degrees or higher outside. Fahrenheit. Let's clarify that.
Okay.
Yeah, as long as it's 45 or higher, then I've got shorts on. I'm not
Yeah.
worried about it.
I'm not that cold. I mean, I'm probably maybe 50, 55. I can wear shorts.
Yeah.
But as we get older, it seems like I see a lot of people our age that prefer
Moving
shorts.
south.
I just got back from the NCSLI Tech Exchange, and there were people wearing shorts at the conference. I'm not sure if I really can get on board with wearing shorts to a conference.
I don't do that. No.
Yeah, so
Not during the day.
yeah,
Maybe at
so-
night when we're out for after hour, drinks or whatever, dinner, but not during the day.
Hey, we got a really good guest today.
Yeah. Kirk Foster.
Yeah, from NASA. I'm excited about it. I got a feeling that you guys are going to talk a lot about risk today, which is going to be a great topic.
As we should. Yeah.
Yeah, we can talk
for us
about
to discuss.
how NAPT is going to have some tools on its website that you guys are helping NAPT create to allow participants to easily do risk analysis, which they're required to do now under 17025.
So an evaluation tool that we'll look at just as a top level, high level, do you have risk in your organization or not? Right, type of thing.
Right, exactly. So I probably should introduce Kurt. He's going to be joining us here in a minute or two. Let me introduce Kurt to people that don't know who he is. Kirk Foster from NASA started his career in metrology in the Army, like me, so that's a positive thing. After he got done with the Army, he went to Stennis program for the space station there, Stennis Space Station, where he advanced as senior metrologist. While at Stennis, he became a section leader for the local NCSLI. It should be noted that Kirk is a huge supporter of NCSLI as well.
Mm-hmm.
He currently works at Marshall Space Flight Center, managing the Metrology and Calibration Lab. He has responsible for the contracts, responsible for the technicians. He's the guy, if you will, at Marshall. Kurt joined us in 2024 as a board of director. He is responsible for government identities. That's his responsibility on the board of directors. Just a great, knowledgeable guy. I think that when I talk about people that know their shit, Howard, you're one of those people, obviously, but Kirk is right up there with you.
He is absolutely up there.
Yeah.
We recently, we spoke with Paul Reese and, another brilliant person that we have. I call him, as a friend, love to have him as a friend, but as a colleague, he has a lot of knowledge. Kirk, the same thing, right? He's just got a lot of detailed knowledge in metrology.
Yeah. And I've been lucky enough to become friends with Kirk as well, which is, one of the great things in this world is you get to be, we're such a small community. We actually get to become, lucky to become friends with people. And I've been lucky enough to call Kirk my friend. And
there he is now.
Behold, there he joins us. Welcome
Excellent
to the chat.
Mr. Foster.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Welcome to ChatNAPT with AI Chatbots Chuck and Howie. And we're going to start chatting, and it was great timing. So how you doing?
I'm doing fine this morning. How are you guys? Everybody good on weather? I know it's kind of wet here.
Yeah.
We were just actually just talking about that, Kurt. It's going to be 70 where I'm at today.
Wow.
So
must be nice.
Yeah.
We're above freezing. The ice and snow mostly has melted. I'm happy about that.
Yeah.
We had some rain last night, so that got rid of a lot of it.
So Kirk, I just got done giving your introduction, and we talked about your role at Marshall, how you are the man. We talked about some of your expertise that you have and how excited that we are that you're on the NAPT board of directors and your role there. And so I think one thing that I want to start out with is that what brought you to NAPT board of directors? Were you tied up and forced to commit to the NAPT board, or how did they strengthen?
It's actually, it's a very much an honor that you invited me to be part of the board. I became known of NAPT a long time ago. So within our labs, individually within NASA, we've always tried to do some kind of interlaboratory comparisons or internal testing, if nothing else. And NAPT was available. So within NASA, we were looking for a high quality, reasonable cost option to formalize our PT processes. And NAPT was there. We made the contacts, everything started going well. And about the same time or a little bit after, we went ahead and got our accreditation, 17025 accreditation as well. So those PTs worked with that, and then a couple other ones as well. So that's how I heard about NAPT. But over the years, I've gotten to know you specifically and others in NAPT. And the relationship and the desire to do it right, to be the best quality, to do the right thing without any bias or stuff like that impressed me the most about NAPT as an organization. And I would say ethics are extremely important to me within my field. I make sure I do not introduce my bias or take any advantage of the situation that I have, and that who we buy from, who we do work for, it is strictly 100% ethics, and that's where I saw
I
NAPT.
agree. How else do you reach truth in measurement without making sure that you're avoiding bias at all costs?
Right. And bias here, we're not talking about measurement bias. We're talking about, performance bias.
Correct. Yeah, exactly. So, good point.
Well, I NAP loves doing, being partners with the NASA groups. This is a sidebar, a quick selling point. We do provide services to all the NASA facilities. We kind of have, I don't want to say a partnership, but we really enjoy the relationship that NAPT has with NASA. And it's what I think going on 9 years now since we've been doing work with you guys. So we love it. So.
Yeah. And as an organization, anybody that, if you're part of a larger organization, maybe you're just one lab out of 10 within a company or something. We found it helped bring our processes and our issues together, right? I mean, we didn't treat it as you failed. It was more like, okay, well, can you do better? What can we do different? And so that's where it's helped drive improvement, self-improvement, really, even though it was across the whole organization.
Yeah. And we're very, very happy to be able to be that organization that you guys choose. So with that being said, one of the topics that I really want to kind of discuss is that both you guys are risk experts. And that seems to be the flavor of the month. We did uncertainty for 20 years, and we've kind of got a basic understanding of risk. I know we got a new component where we're going to talk about, risk components, pass, fail, that kind of thing, and whether or not our failure is a good pass or not. But that's not what we want to talk about right now. I'd really like to get both you guys' opinion on risk. And if you could, maybe talk about where NAPT is going to go, some things that you guys are helping NAPT do with risk analysis. That is something I think that our audience would really like to know more about.
Okay. Thanks. Go ahead.
If you want to talk about the abstract that we have for the paper that we're working on, just a little bit about the highlights there.
Yeah. So, when you start talking risk around metrology people, they all go immediately to measurement decision risk. And that is a component to it. But there are many more risks involved in taking a measurement than just that. And characterizing those or understanding where you need to, rank and file them kind of an order that needs to follow. You need to think about those. And so if you look at, let's stay out of 17025 right now. Let's look at just general quality documents. The term risk is now entered into AS 9100, ISO 9001, the term risk was not meant to be about our measurement decision risk. It was meant about operational risk, all risks that involved in your business and your stuff. And within measurement, there's other things like, for instance, how easy are your procedures to modify, and do you have revision control? Do you have things like that? Those are all important things to risk to the measurement. Are you checking for bias from your suppliers of your calibration standards? What method? That's a risk there. And so really the risk part that I'm not going to get into the measurement decision risk part, because there's 3 million people out there all racing to try to deal with that. I'm saying let's back up and see the forest for the trees. We're really supposed to be looking at all the components that impact our risk, right? From calibration training, the new employee training, awareness, security, redundancy, automation. These are all things that you need to look at as a risk component.
Yeah, when I have written many of the papers I've put out there, I'm not focused on just measurement decision risk, but also on what I call quality blind spots, right? The things that you don't think about or may not have given much thought to that can cause unexpected or unacceptable results. You mentioned like training, for example, or document control. If you don't have something purposeful in place to make sure that risk can't be introduced through those changes that are being made, then something's going to happen that you're not predicting that could end in a result that you cannot accept and may not be aware of. That's why I call it a quality blind spot, right?
Right.
So trying to prevent those is really very important as part of the overall service you're providing, the work that you're doing, not just the measurements themselves.
Right. We're more than just a sticker, right? And that's a common thing we've heard about. So
yeah,
within our field, they said most people, when they see the term risk, they go straight to that measurement decision risk, which is important. Don't get me wrong, but there's a lot of things we do every day with the risk management, and it's something that we intuitively do every day even in our personal lives. Yeah. When you leave for work, what time do you leave for work? Well, you leave from work in time to be on time for work, right? But now what happens if you have a flat tire? How often does that happen? That's kind of what risk management's about. You made allowances or mitigations for potential risks based on their likelihood and severity.
Right.
Right. And that's what the paper is really going to get down to, is take the appropriate action. I'm sorry, folks, I didn't.
Yeah, it's about thinking ahead, right? In every aspect of your life, not just work, not just measurements, but you're planning for the day, right? Just thinking ahead of potential for things that could go wrong and trying to mitigate those to make sure they don't go wrong.
Well, and we even do that intuitively. If you look inside your laboratory or your organization, you're doing that. And all the ISO, AS91, all the risk mitigation standards, all they're saying is write it down, document it, and track it, and then adjust, right? Which we've done in our laboratories or in our lives automatically. And it's just from a quality standpoint, they just want you to kind of document it and start that, you say it, do it, prove it. It's the old ISO triangle there. But just go, it's a constant of evolution. And most people just don't think it's the documentation point that kind of sticks everybody with, how do I do that? Right.
Well, one thing that I've challenged both you guys on in your paper, and one thing that I'm afraid of, we're not requiring people to perform risk analysis that don't, first of all, understand what is to do a full risk analysis. But now we have to, like you said, document it. So I'm hoping that the paper that you guys are writing and the tools that you're going to help provide to the community from this paper provide enough guidance, detailed guidance, to where not only can the person perform risk analysis for proficiency testing, but it becomes a tool for the assessor. Because I think even, quite honestly, I think the assessors are struggling with trying to understand what is risk, because they're not getting enough support from the accreditation body. The accreditation body, in my opinion, has not defined risk to a degree where they can train the assessor on what they need to look for from the CAB, from the accreditation body. That's a component that I think is going to cause a lot of problems And if we don't get this education, i.e. your paper that you guys are writing, out to the community at large, it's going to continue to be a struggle like we did for 20 years with uncertainty.
Yep. Yeah. The
Well-
intent of the paper is threefold, right? Regarding risk, to identify it, to quantify it, and mitigate it, right? Finding ways to do that, at least making people aware that they need to identify those risk areas, quantify them, and then find steps to mitigate it so that it's minimized.
And to the finer point, I kind of digress from you a little bit on the, we can give examples. We should be giving examples, or different people should be sharing how they do it.
Mhm.
Okay. I don't like when things get too prescriptive, because we don't really grow if we legislate step by step how you're supposed to do something. You don't get to learn new things. You're going to execute somebody else's plan and never really learn for yourself. And that's why I like to say, give them ideas, give them a broad brush approach, give them some examples of how you do it possibly.
Sure. Yeah.
But really let them grow themselves. I mean, we're trying to get it started, and it just grows, and new things are learned. I learn new things all the time. I mean, Chris Gratchen had just created a paper about risk, and he had something in there. I thought it was kind of cool, and something I hadn't thought about there before. And I'm sure Howard's got some that I'm not aware of as well. I mean, he's
Right.
in his career, I'm sure he's used different risk management techniques and drawings, and who knows. I mean, I just saw one recently that was posted on LinkedIn too, another method, bow tie, I think it was called.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which
Saw that.
I didn't have time to delve into a lot, but that's what I like to see, to develop. And don't be too prescriptive in your standards or methods of how you have to do something, and then just get the creative juices flowing, so to speak, and to see where other people take it.
We should give a post that paper that Chris, you mentioned, Chris wrote, is available on the NAB website as well. We made it available on the website at proficiency.org. Another free plug for NAPT. So.
Oh, absolutely. So it's great when we write papers, we do all this stuff, but if no one ever reads them, what good is it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you
Definitely
got to
gotta
get them
it.
published out. You got to get them out there.
Yeah, and we try and do that. So, well, great. So, Howard, you got this start of a tool
I do.
that you and I kind of worked on a little bit, and
I mean, it's just a draft, so I could share that just to give a quick glance at it, but it's in development.
what's
say
the goal of this tool might conflict with what Kurt is saying, because what NAPT would like to do is provide this tool on the customer portal to members, so they have a basic foundation so they can do risk analysis. And maybe it's become too prescriptive, and that would be not what Kirk wants to
it's
see happen.
focused more on identifying your risk in providing poor measurements without knowing it, right? What are the things you can control that will help with that? It's going to be documentation and training and things like that, but also, how are you doing with your proficiency testing? Do you have those all in place to cover your scope of accreditation? What's your passing rate on those, right? There's a number of factors that we'll have in there, and we'll just make a tool that'll be available on NAPT's website that will show these factors, and you just give yourself a rating from 1 to 10 on. It'll kind of help guide you on figuring out what the rating is based on what you know about your organization, and it'll come up with an overall score that says, here's an assessment of what we think your risk is based on the answers to these questions. And then that'll help them identify what the next steps are.
To cover Howard here, I don't believe it's prescriptive. He's not being prescriptive by providing that tool. It's like, here's an option that you can use. If you don't know where to start, hey, try this tool, see if this works for you.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just like uncertainty budget calculators over the years. There was a few that went out there, then there was many more over the years. There's probably hundreds of Excel spreadsheets. Here's an example of how you can do one.
Right.
And that's what I mean prescriptive. I'm talking about regulatory prescription, right? Or standard prescription. There's times to be very prescriptive about requirements or things, but they should say, like they have now, you will understand and document your risk.
Mhm.
That's what they say. They don't tell you how to do it, because
Pretty
what works
vague.
for me is not going to work good for Howard.
Correct.
But to get people started, people like us have to figure out how to convey our knowledge and our experience there with doing risk analysis get that
To help
out there
them
for
get the
people to
ball
see.
rolling, right?
Get the ball rolling. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, the biggest concern that I have right now is that I'm seeing a lot of organizations saying they don't have risk. Well, we can all argue that there is no such thing as not having risk. There's always risk.
But how
And
did you determine that? That's the question.
well, that's a good point.
Don't ask, don't tell, right?
Well, but the cabs are, if they don't understand the basic fundamentals of what a risk analysis is, they can't perform that. So that's where we need to provide that. And I'm really looking forward to your paper because I think it'll become almost a standard for even the assessors to use, maybe a guidance document for those people within the ABs, when they adhere to the P9 document. These are all hugely important things. So with that, Howard, do you want to share a real brief thing of what you're working on?
Quick look at it. Just looking at success factors. This is a format that's used pretty widely in business. You could give it weighting factors. We decided to just weight everything evenly, but you could play with that if you wanted to. And then here's where you give it a score. And here's some guidance on what it is, defining what each of these success factors are. We'll throw in some identification of what a higher risk in that category is. So they can identify in their organization, where do I fall on a 1 to 10 here? Give it the ratings. It comes across with a score. You get an overall rating, and then you have a tool that'll come up to say, okay, if you're in this range, like 1 to 3 or 1 to 4, you have pretty high risk, and here's the next steps you should be taking. If you're in that moderate range of risk, you definitely need to still get things under control, but you've got some things under control already, it looks like. And then if you're in a higher score, things are probably pretty well in check. So it's, again, just a gauging tool to figure out where am I today if I've never done this, and point you in the right direction.
I think this would be a great tool if we can automate this, on the customer portal. That's something that we'll have to challenge the programmers with, to give them a tool where they can take, those 10 criterias, those basic criterias, and then, see if they comply or not comply, and then what they should do if they don't comply.
Right.
Yeah, that's a great example. Another way or method to do it. I tend to use the matrix process only because NASA that's what they use.
Mm-hmm.
I've simplified it a little bit for in the lab side here. But in the other part, I think it's good to document is not only do you have a risk, what have you done to mitigate that risk on there? Why is the risk to your failure or business or product low? What you must have done something, right? Because if you, for instance, let's go back to the tire analogy. If you have a bald tire, the likelihood of having a flat just went up. So therefore your risk just went up, right?
Right.
So if your risk goes up, what are you going to mitigate? Well, your mitigation is I'm going to have my tires changed or get new tires when I get to this tread depth, right? You've specified what you're going to do to mitigate that risk of having a bald tire. So, and I know that's a very basic scenario there.
But
it is, but there's other factors that come with that, right? So if I'm stretching my budget, I don't have the money to replace those tires, I'm trying to run them as long as I can. Now you're risking not only a flat, but possibly some medical problems, right? Or with others, hitting another car
That's
or
right.
another building, financial factors that come into play, fatalities. You don't want to, how much risk do you want to take, right?
Oh, exactly. So that's why almost every risk analysis process includes two major components.
Mhm.
It's the risk of it occurring, the likelihood, and then the impact from a failure.
Yes.
And so those are almost always two components that are considered in a risk analysis.
Yes.
I can't imagine not having those two components because that really, like you said, maybe I don't often have bald tires, but the impact or severity, if I did have a flat from that or a blowout, well, that would be very large. It could be millions of dollars or cost somebody their life.
Right.
And that would be a severe impact, So yeah, you always have to have those two components. That's a good point, Howard.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited about your paper. So the question I guess I would ask is this going to be a book or is it going to be a paper? Because clearly there's enough information where you guys could write a book.
Yeah, papers should not be books. That's my opinion. They need to be small
is not
enough
gonna be a
that
book.
people will read it, right? Capture the reader's attention, not turn them off.
Yeah.
Number one, I don't have the time to write a book myself. So I think this is a paper with examples and a couple general principles just to get the juices flowing, just to get people
Yes.
thinking.
Yeah.
And like I said, I see too many people focusing on when they read the thing risk in the standards, they're thinking about measurement decision risk. That's our, as metrologists or technicians, that's kind of where we are. Our mind is always thinking about that, but we're talking about risk in general.
Yeah.
Any operational risk, anything that can impact your calibration. And like my list of risks that I have down, I don't have all of them here in the own lab. There's things that have never happened. I'll give you an example. What would happen if a tornado takes out the lab?
Right.
I don't have that down in the risk. Okay.
Right.
The likelihood is extremely low. The impact would be severe, but that doesn't mean I already have things in place. All our data, all our stuff is backed up to a different location on a regular basis. So there'd be some recovery effort. There would be stuff like that. But I don't have that in my
your risk plan for that really shouldn't be that specific or prescribed, right? The risk related to being to a shutdown is really what happens if there's an event of any kind, power outage, right? Tornado,
Right.
hurricane, whatever,
right.
that causes me to be unable to provide the services that are critical to the operation. And what do I do about that?
And
Right.
so do you have a policy on how you handle, power outages or long,
Right.
again, how long they are? Do you have UPS backup, generator backup? I mean, you can cover all those things in a policy if you want to. Again, it's about understanding your risks, and based on likelihood too. Likelihood and severity are the most important.
So
And
you
those
guys
are the
are going
ones
to have this. You're going to have this paper done in time for it, because I understand that you've might be given a paper at the NCSLI conference in July on
That's the
this.
plan.
That's the
And
goal.
obviously, the paper will be written ahead of that time, and it'll be a great paper, I'm sure. I mean, I'm excited as heck to not only get it, but to be able to share it with participants of NAPT who are struggling with doing risk analysis, and just a document that can be shared with assessors and whoever to get them on that starting point. Like you guys said, give them a couple of examples. I think it's a great paper, and I can't wait for it. So I'm looking forward to the presentation in CSLI.
So this
Right.
MCSLI is in Cleveland. We've been there once before, a number of years ago. Chuck, that happens to be the weekend of my golf outing.
Oh no.
Yeah. So that's when it starts. So I probably won't be there for the Saturday, Sunday because of that. I'll probably show up on Monday.
Okay. Well, you can show up on late Sunday night. Yeah.
Should be okay.
Yeah. All right.
All right. So let's switch gears here a little bit, if you don't mind. And we want to go to some question and answer periods. So before I start with my questions, actually just looking at you, Kirk, I'm interested in that artwork above your whiteboard. What is that all about?
Well, the story behind that is that we had a mentor process. And so myself and a couple other managers were mentoring a potential new manager in her role or her growth. And part of that mentorship was to go out and do an activity after work of some kind, right?
Oh.
And we had another one of our managers had suggested that we go down to, there's these places you can drink wine and paint.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
if you know anything about me, that would be like a heck no. Okay.
For Chuck and I, that'd be a thumbs up.
So what we came up with instead is there's a place here in Huntsville called Bullets and Barrels, and that's where you can have a beer after you shoot, right? They have an indoor range and stuff like that.
Glad
we
it's
took
that
her.
way around.
I know we swapped it around, but I tell you what, we took her to it. She had a blast. I mean, she had never shot some of the things we shot there, and she just absolutely had a blast. So to pick on me a little bit, she went ahead and went to that art and wine type event, and she painted me a rocket.
That's
A
awesome.
picture of a rocket. So
I love it.
thanks. So yeah.
So by the way,
Sorry.
I wouldn't have called that bullets and barrels. I would have called it shots and shots. I think they had
Well,
a missed
that's a
opportunity
good.
there.
Hey, we got a new business to put in Huntsville now, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, I like it.
All right, Chuck, I'm sure you've got a question as well.
Yeah, I got a really big, important question. Is what's next? I know that got a long time before you retire, Kirk. So the question that I'm curious about is, do you have any more plans? Do you have any more goals? Do you have anything else that you want to achieve? Are you comfortable with where you're at? Do you want to be, become the president of NCSLI, for example? Do you want to become the president of the NAP board? Is there anything that you want to share with the audience of what you want to become further than being the man at
I
Marshall?
can tell you right now, I don't want to get more than a half a step away from putting my hands on equipment and metrology problems, right? Helping customers with their issues and stuff like that. So I personally have no desire to leave the lab or not be very far from one. Let's put it that way. I like testing problems. I like, area issues or failures or whatever it may be. I'd like to be involved in that. I'm actually quite happy where I'm at. I wear multiple hats on this existing contract as well. Deputy General Manager at this point. So that's enough challenges. Plus, my role with NAPT, that does take a little bit of time, and I'm glad to do it because I think it's a great. I wish everybody could understand just how important PTs are in their life. So I would say organizationally, I want to, we have the Metrology and Calibration Working Group within NASA.
Yeah.
That has grown quite a bit during my career from where we started, and I'd like to see it grow even more. And it's a great venue to test things, to try things, to educate, to assist people. And at the end of the day, my goal is to make the measurements or the customer's way they take measurements better anywhere in that. So that's where my goals are. I can say that this field is not something you ever really stop growing in, right? It's not like, well, I got there and I get it done, I relax and take it easy. No, the evolution of automation. I mean, I can't wait to see where AI comes in,
Right.
And
Yeah.
the new hassles and controls and stuff that, we talk about quality a lot of times. How are you going to quality an AI thing? How am I going to validate an AI if I don't know what it used to make its decision? Right. Can you theoretically accept a qualification or validation of your software because the AI looked at it? The AI said it was good.
Maybe the focus there is, what was the goal and did it achieve the goal? How else do you do it?
Well, that's kind of what we do now. If you have a good system, again, that's another risk. How well you manage your software and controls and stuff like that. But yeah, for me, the field never ends. There's always new stuff. And then I will say it gets more complex the lower our uncertainties get, and the better the equipment that we're calibrating gets, right? I mean,
more of a challenge.
It's way more of a challenge, and there's more. Let's go back to risk. There's more risk involved in saying it's good or bad now.
Correct.
Real briefly, you just brought something about AI. We were at an event and they had this trivia contest, and it basically boiled down to how quick the person could Google the answer. What we found was that several people were using not only different AI engines, but for example, one of the questions came out was, what is the equation to define the volt? And believe it or not, one AI that was used gave the wrong answer.
Oh, wow.
Absolutely.
And so when we talk about risk, you hit it right in the head, Kirk, is we can't trust AI because, that old cliche, garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah, it's got to be validated.
This kind of goes to my thoughts on my history and experience with automation in general, right? If you do your best, you got people that are highly experienced writing these procedures and the processes, and they check and they validate and they do it manually and they compare and they do all that for us to validate. And then it gets handed down to somebody else that is not nearly as experienced or, with that measurement or with that process. And then over time, maybe that guy retires or he moves somewhere else. So now you've got an automated program that is being given to somebody else. And who's to say it's still good? That something changes, something happens. So a lot of our procedure stuff are based on the level of competence of the person that wrote them.
Mm-hmm.
And then we don't think about that we've handed them over to somebody that doesn't have anywhere near that level of competence. And we'll never get that level of competence because the procedure tells him to do this, he does that.
Right. Yeah.
Or she does that.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'm worried with AI, it's going to be even worse because like you said, how do you validate the answers unless you know them yourself?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. That requires recurring review, right? If you're going to have people that are running those automated processes, or machines that are doing that, you've got to constantly evaluate that on a regular periodic interval to make sure that there hasn't been something in that process that needed to change to keep up with whatever else you're trying to do.
Yeah, I agree. So
I'm
All
okay
right,
with AI recommending a restaurant, based on, hey, you like this, and this. So here's a restaurant suggestion. But
that's a pretty quick validation, right? What the
Yeah.
heck are you telling me to go here for? This is not anything I would want, right?
yeah, exactly.
All right, my next question is a standard question we ask all of our guests, and I call it the 4M moment. What is your most memorable metrology moment? Give yourself a second to think through that. You've got a lot of years to
that's a
think
tough
through.
one. Within NASA, through 36 years, there have been a lot of things coming our way to figure out how to do. I would say I've got some ideas and help. It wasn't just me that got it all put together, but we developed several new processes, almost new instruments, new methods to do calibrations that improved repeatability and uncertainty and everything else. We built the machines ourselves.
That's a sense of pride.
And yeah, that's when it comes together and everything works, that's very rewarding to me.
It is. Yeah, absolutely. I can feel that. That's awesome. All right, Chuck, I'll pass it back to you.
Well, the question that I ask is that, you're very much involved with NASA, and you have a limited support for NCSLI. What do you do in your private life that you enjoy? Like, I know that you have this farm that you work. Tell us about your private life a little bit, where you go away to get away from metrology. I used to play golf to get away from metrology. Howard has his music. What do you do, Kirk, to get away from metrology?
Honestly, I don't get away from metrology even when I'm doing the things I like to do. It's just, you can't take it out of my blood. It's going to be something I consider or would joke with, but in general. So yeah, I do have a small farm and I enjoy, taking care of that. That's a good stress reliever, I guess you could call it. But I do some hunting, I do some fishing. There's nothing better than being out on the ocean and catching some fish and with some good friends and whatnot. So yeah, but it could literally be a drive. Like NCSL is work in a regard. Like say going to the conference, that's work. But for me, the drive there and the drive home are the relaxing part.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of like a mini vacation as I'm going to a work event.
You don't like to fly. You don't fly.
I don't like to fly because, without being mean about it, they don't treat you well. You're just being treated like cattle, and you don't really get to see what America has to offer. You travel from one city, fly over, you can't even see the ground, and there is so much in between right here in America that I think a lot of people are missing because they're jumping on an airplane.
Yeah,
great
point.
I see your point.
Yeah.
So my rule of thumb, since I travel quite a bit for work, is 5 hours, 6 hours maybe for the flights, right? So if it's a longer drive than 5 or 6 hours, then I'll fly. Shorter than that, it makes sense to drive. And you're right, there's a lot that you can see. You can stop when you want. It's a little more convenient.
Right.
Yeah.
It does depend. Some people don't like driving. They don't like, and they like, city life. I like to see open scenery and meet people from Idaho if I'm driving through there. I like to, that's what I like to see, instead of just everyone at an airport is all mad, stressed out, upset, their flight's delayed, so I just prefer to drive. That's all.
Right. Right. So Howard, I think we got time for like one or two more questions. Do you have any other questions that you have for our guest?
Yeah, you kind of went into the whole hobby thing. What do you do with your time outside of work? What about travel destinations? Have you taken any great vacations that are memorable?
Well, the Alaska cruise was by far, that was a harder one to drive within a time frame, right? By the way, I had to fly on that one because there just wasn't enough time to drive. But it actually is in the forecast to do Alaska again by driving the Alcan. And
oh wow!
So
okay.
That is a goal. Key West will probably be the next possibility. I haven't been down the Keys, so I'm probably going to drive down the Keys. It's going to take a couple of days or half a week, depending on it. It's opportunity, right? I'm trying to work it, moving in with a lot of I don't take a long vacation. Usually I take a couple of days to drive somewhere, or 3 days, had an extra day. We were out in California for one of the events, and I had an extra day so I could go up and see, Yosemite. Of course,
Oh,
half
it's
of it was
beautiful.
closed because of snow, but it still is gorgeous.
Yeah,
So-
we were, I think it's 2017 when we lived in California, just before we moved back to the Midwest. Went up to Yosemite just after a lot of the fires had occurred. And so parts of the park were closed off. But I tell you, we got out of the car and looked up and saw Half Dome. Just unbelievable view.
There
Had a
wasn't
great
a
time.
direction you could look. There wasn't something amazing, right?
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
a John Muir fan. I
Mhm.
listen to his books almost every night, and the descriptions. And it was nice to put eyes on some of the descriptions
Oh,
that he
yeah.
had in his
Yeah,
his
it's a
books.
beautiful
So,
place.
Great.
and I think I have. So I haven't been to Maine yet. I have driven or been through every state. Of course, I haven't been to Hawaii yet. So I have Washington. I'm sorry, Oregon. I have Oregon and Maine and North Dakota. They have states that I have not hit, plus Hawaii. So
Well, I'm lucky. I've slept in every state except Alaska. And for me now, I've got to get to Alaska, even if it's for just one night, so I can, put through that cliche thing that I've slept in
stop
every
being
state.
cheap and take your wife on a cruise.
She won't do cruises. She hates cruises.
She can't hate this cruise. Trust me.
Kirk, when you see her at the barn, when we have the barn party that we're gonna have here in August. If you can convince her, because I would love to do that cruise that you've talked about. I would absolutely love to do it. If you can talk her into it, then I owe you big time.
Okay,
So
I'll do my best. I said,
Speaking
I've
of
got
Alaska,
pictures.
you mentioned you like hunting and fishing, and I imagine in Alaska that's part of what you do out there, right?
Actually, I didn't get a chance to do any of that while I was up there. The cruise time and the schedules allowed certain things, certain times, and it wasn't.
Okay.
You were pretty busy, so I didn't get a chance to get off on a fishing trip.
Yeah, we had a group of people at Transcat that used to get together and go up to Alaska for fishing, right? Mainly salmon. And boy, they'd bring back quite a bit.
We scheduled ours later in the season, and the last season for, I believe it was red salmon.
Mhm.
Anyways, the season had just ended for salmon, so I still could have gone for halibut and stuff like that, but it wasn't time. A halibut trip is longer than you had at the port of stay,
Right.
So what kind of fish do you catch around where you are?
Well, fishing here in Tennessee and Alabama is mainly on the Tennessee River, so it's bass, stripers, hybrid stripers, crappie, stuff like that. And by offshore fishing, though, speckled trout, redfish, cobia, tuna, different trips will get different kind of fish, depending on what you want to fish for. So
I think it's fair to say that you miss your offshore fishing. I think that's fair to say.
Absolutely. If I had enough money to retire and buy the boat and the location down there, that's where I would probably be retired to.
Yeah.
Well, or you could charter a boat for others and that'll pay for itself.
Yeah. Charters work good too. Don't get me wrong. They're a good deal. I just, to jump in the boat and go out when you want to, and it doesn't take long to learn the right thing.
Well, we got time for one more question, Howard. We're kind of running late or not.
What type of game do you hunt for? You're a bird person, or are you more of a?
I've done it all in my life. Where I'm at now is that also I'm getting older. I have a really nice deer stand on my own property, and so that. But lately
that's not hunting.
Well, it may not be, and it's relaxing, and I don't care if I shoot anything or not. I know that sounds cliche, but I watch owls get their mouse. I watch bobcats kind of slither here and there, and all sorts of weird stuff. You get to watch all the wildlife, so it's relaxing. And then I put a few in the freezer, and I enjoy venison. So
any boar hunting or bear hunting?
No bear and no boar hunting. I was in Mississippi and I had opportunities to do it there, but I didn't. I was actually working longer hours there than I am here. So
speaking about birds, so have you ever seen? They've done some studies on this. Have you ever seen? Let me share this. You ever see birds that fly in this pattern, right? They're typically a V pattern. And sometimes like this, they're longer on one side. And they've done some studies on this. Chuck, do you know why that happens?
I do not.
It's because there's more birds on that side. Yeah. Gotcha. I got to tell you, the person that told me that actually stoned me on that one the first time was back when I worked at, was Martin Marietta at the time. Martin Marietta became Lockheed Martin. And so this is just going back to that thought. Martin Marietta, the Sand Lake Road division, was missile and defense systems. And they made the Hellfire missiles for the AH-64 Apache attack helicopter. They also made, on the front end of this thing, the TADS PINVIS system, Target Acquisition Designation Site, and I'll explain that in a second. Pilot Night Vision System uses a visible camera and a forward-looking infrared that's tied to the pilot's helmet. And they've got a piece that comes down over their eyes so they can target and look in any type of inclement weather, target what they're looking for, zone in on it, and send the Hellfire missiles to it. So here I am up in the left corner of this D. You can't see me, but I had worked there less than a year when they did this picture of the 300th TADS unit that they had delivered. And so there's a gentleman I worked with there in the calibration lab, Roger Spalding, who was just a jokester, right? He was just a funny guy. And he got me on that joke, right? I'm sitting here trying to delve into it, right? I'm a young guy just out of the Air Force. I'm thinking theoretical all the time, right? I'm trying to figure out what this new business world is. And my head is just in the details, right? And he pulls that out, and I'm sitting here going, there's got to be a good reason for this, right? And I just can't get it. And then it gives me the obvious, simple answer. And that helped me to stay grounded, to think about that, to say, you know what, sometimes it's just a simple solution, right?
Yeah.
So I'm scouring, I haven't talked to Roger in years. I'm scouring the World Wide Web. My daughter loves when I use that term, to figure out, hey, where is he now? I think he's still in Florida somewhere. What's he doing? And the only picture I could come up with was this one.
Jeez.
Apparently, after he retired, he converted to Catholicism and became a nun.
Oh, that's terrible.
Roger was hilarious. He was fun to work with. But anyway, that's my bird story.
Well, unfortunately, we're actually out of time, guys. You know, Kurt, we have to have you back again, because there's just never enough time to explore the wealth of knowledge you have.
Yeah.
So maybe after you get your paper written and we can pick a new topic, because I have a ton of more questions I would love to ask you. But, you know, we would probably bore our listeners. So
yeah, and I hope with expectations in the paper is not too much, because my deal is not to get into theoretical, physics or anything like that, or mathematics, significant, mathematics.
No, nothing like that.
It's all generalizations, and just again, it's about getting people thinking.
You got it.
And it's been great seeing you guys again.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us. Any closing words of wisdom, Mr. Ellis?
Yeah. First and foremost, I'd like to thank our sponsor, ChatNAPT, obviously, for helping us put this out on board. You know, as the cliche goes, proficiency testing is the only true measure one can do to perform their technical competency. That's true. Sign up today for ILCs, whether you use NAPT or you use your own internal, you've got to do proficiency testing. It's the only way you can prove your competency.
All right.
So with that being said, we'll look forward to seeing you the next time. Thanks for listening to our podcast, and look for the future ones that we have down the road.
Thank you. How easy out.
Good day, everybody. Be careful.
All right. Kurt, thank you very much, sir. I appreciate all your wisdom, and I can't wait to see your paper.